judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. Choice to judge rather than to know. Judgment is blind concepts. And you have another dimension that cultivating you have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers and sisters totally without judgment.
气我，不要一直气我，可以吗？不要一直让我心情不好，不要，就是不。fuck， 那我就用墙壁，既然 deep unconscious， 我不能见这种人，我要见那种觉醒的人，比较 enlightened 的，不能见这种 anti-socialized。Because I agree.
AI is going to make the share market go to a new high, and the companies that will benefit is not going to be only the tax.
Because if you try and try and try to get enlightened, and then you get so frustrated, it's not happening. So you join the suffering group, and then you're much more likely to find it. Now here's an interesting little paragraph on the Bhagavad Gita. What kind of people become spiritual seekers? And it divides into there are four types of persons, according to here, and this still applies very much nowadays, and this was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. There are four different types of persons who seek spirituality or God. So Krishna talks again as the personification of the One. Four types of people seek a connection with me.
越南有，越南都有。
People who worship God for the alleviation of physical or mental agony, or to be released from fears and adversity. Many people, of course, who come to a spiritual teacher or teaching or a spiritual book come for that reason, and it is a good reason to want to be free of suffering. And of course, the whole Buddha's teaching is about freedom from suffering, so that's one type. The whole Buddha's teaching is about freedom from suffering, so that's one type. Two are the seekers of happiness. They are seeking happiness through worldly things. People who pray to God to obtain wealth, family, power, prestige, and so forth. So maybe those are people also who do go into manifesting things through positive thinking and affirmations, but come on, connecting with a somewhat deeper level, yes, in a limited way still, yes, So they're seeking spirituality because they want something in this world. But it still applies. Not that much has changed, apparently. And then there are the seekers of this number 3 now, the third group, are the seekers of spiritual advancement. People whose motive for connecting with the divinity is to gain knowledge and experience to aid their self-realization. And I would add, people also who want to have the high of it, what they conceive of as the high that surely enlightenment must be, as I sometimes call it. They want the fireworks, they're waiting for some ultimate experience. So that's another group, many like that. And of course, I'd love to talk about that in a minute. Number 4, these are relatively rare according to the Bhagavad Gita, are people who want to know God, who truly want to know the Atma, the Self, who know that God alone exists, and whose only impulse is for the divine and nothing else. Those are relatively rare. I just want God. So the ones, numbers, whose motive for connecting with divinity is to gain knowledge and experience to aid their self-realization. So we have wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy through this, that, or the other. 3, wanting knowledge or experience, some high. And 4, the direct, wanting the one. I just want that. So it's, of course, Bhagavad Gita says, of these 4, the last is the highest because they know my truths and are devoted to me. As I'm supremely dear to them, they are very dear to me. The first 3 are attached to the worldly objects or mental states they desire. But certainly all 4 types are noble because any reason for turning Godward or inwards will in due time lead to spiritual transformation and is therefore ultimately good. So my comment on this is it is true that the ones who just want God are rare, and that's fine, it's not needed. Wanting to be free of suffering is more helpful. Those who want to be free of suffering or adversity, who've had enough suffering, that is a very powerful motivation for seeking spiritual awakening. It's a more powerful motivation and more likely to lead to realization or awakening than those who are seeking either happiness, because they will have to experience that none of the things they seek, even when they get them, is really going to fulfill that purpose of making them happy and fulfilled. And then they begin to suffer, so they join group 1. So first you're in that group for quite a while, and then when you realize, okay, my manifestation is great, it works, but still it's not quite right because I'm not.
没有，我以为你忘了哦。
Nothing fulfills me. Then
记
you
得这样
join,
久
you go back to group
，You
one.
so
You're
long 了，
suffering.
哇！
And if you're seeking, no many spiritual seekers seek some kind of enlightenment experience or
Oh,
awakening, and sometimes they write in and say, I've been trying so hard for so many years and it's not happening yet. I want to be free, I want to be enlightened, or whatever they call it. And they are expecting some kind of experience, or they believe that if they acquire enough knowledge about it, finally it's going to
连50次。
Million copies worldwide and had been translated into 50 languages. Eckhart Tolle, probably would report. I'm truly thrilled to have you here, and I suspect this is going to be an interview like no other that I've done. Do you have a preference for what language, since you've been translated into basically every living language on earth? Is English going to be okay for the purposes of this?
I'll be happy with English. I wrote it in English. I do give talks sometimes in German and Spanish, but before I do that, I must prepare myself and read the German and Spanish translations of the book.
Yeah. Well, all right, we'll go with English, at least for the beginning portion of this. So the way that you end up here, because I think people are going to go, whoa, this is a little different than what's going on in Dave's garage usually. You came here by way of seeing an interview that I did with my friend, my mentor, and really the guy that I think is the best interviewer of all time, Larry King. I thought that would be an interesting way of starting, because that I think is how you got introduced to me.
Yes, I've also been a fan of Larry King for many years, and I happened to come across an interview with him on YouTube, and I was very impressed not only by you as an interviewer, because you have that openness that many interviewers lack, and that of course Larry King also has. And I was very impressed by some of the things that Larry actually said about how he conducts the interviews. He always comes from a place of curiosity, from a place of not knowing, from a place of wanting to find out the interviewee's perspective. And most interviewers, of course, they have a mental position that they seem to protect, or they are trying to prevail with their mental position. They're not really interested in what the interview has to say. So after seeing that interview, during the interview that he actually mentioned, he interviewed me a few weeks after I watched that interview. There was another coincidence. And when Larry King interviewed me, I mentioned having seen your interview with him, and then our makeup artist connected us because she works for Larry as well as for you.
Yeah, and here we are. All right, well, I guess a good way to start for the few people watching that don't know, can you tell me a little bit about your background? Until you were 29 years old, spirituality actually wasn't your thing. People are so associated with that with you. But can you just tell a little bit about growing up?
Yes, I grew up in Germany up to the age of 15. At 15, I left school. I just couldn't stand anymore, so I refused to go to school. My parents had gotten divorced. My dad had moved to Spain, and my mom didn't know what to do with me. I was just hanging around at home, didn't want to go to school, so I was sent to live with my dad in Spain, where I lived for 4 years until the age of 19. Without going to school, my dad was always a very unconventional person. He asked me to go to school. I said no, because I told them don't.
Wow. So what were you doing?
I pursued my own interests. I read some, started reading literature, of course, a lot of Spanish, a
16, I started working part-time as a translator of restaurant menus, and then I became a tour guide. I was 17, I became a tour guide for taking people around from cruise ships around the Spanish town where we lived. And then at 19, I moved to England to work. In England, I immediately felt at home. I had to feel some deep connection with England. And I worked in England for 4 years, full time, and became more interested in intellectual things. So I took all the necessary exams that were required to get into university. At the time, we were called O levels and A levels and so on. So I took those exams. And finally, I got a scholarship to get into London University, where I studied modern languages and literature. And so that's the external story. On the inside, I experienced increasingly periods of terrible anxiety and depression, even while I was working and while I was a student.
Can you describe what that was?
Yes, it was an inability to stop my mind. My mind was continuously racing along and creating scenarios of where I failed, where I lost the little that I had. It went a lot into the past too, and felt ashamed of all the things that happened in the past. But not only that, there was a deeper existential fear and existential anguish that's hard to describe. It is a kind of alienation from the world. Alienation is probably the best word, where everything that you come into contact with feels strange and alien and disconnected from everything and everybody. And that is something that I believe many people these days suffer from. Or it has also existed, it has happened to isolated individuals in the past. If you want to read about that state, I recommend in the Old Testament there is the book of Ecclesiastes, which starts with the famous phrase, that's in the old translation, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. But what it really means, if you use the modern term, I would translate it as everything is so effing pointless. So what's the point of it all? To be deeply affected by the seeming meaninglessness of life around you. So I remember when I went into a department store in London and walked on the streets, it seemed so absurd that people were buying all these things and then going out their shopping bags full of stuff. Everything seemed so absurd and meaningless and always producing a kind of nausea. And that nausea is actually a novel by Jean-Paul Sartre where he describes that state. So that's exactly how it is. It is described